Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us here at 2:30. Our U.S. Hispanic Council has put together a tremendous session on attribution with some great speakers. They're kind of continuing a conversation that was started in March at our Miami event. There's always just such distinct challenges to measuring attribution in a bilingual marketplace. I want to thank Marcelino, who's the chair of our U.S. Hispanic Council. I want to thank Mike, who's a member of our U.S. Hispanic Council, for stepping up and raising his hand to moderate. And then, of course, we always want to thank our sponsor for the education. Oh, let's go back one. Where'd it go? There it is. Pacific Media Technologies is sponsoring all of our education. They've got a message that they've shared with us to share with you, so here it is.
Our team is bar none. I mean, together as a family, pretty much, family niche.
You've got people that are easy to talk to. They don't mind if you come to them with problems. They're easy to work with.
I'm happy working with my coworkers, and I can't wait to get here.
They deliver work that they're proud of, and it shows.
Pacific Media Technologies. Technology-driven, quality guaranteed.
And again, to thank you to PMT for your support. Again, Attribution Journey Challenges in the U.S. Hispanic sector. Here's our group, and I'm going to pass it over to Mike.
Thanks, Tom. Am I on? Yeah, I'm on. Great. As Tom mentioned, we wanted to recap just a little bit. If some of you that may have missed the February Miami attribution conversation, just even from my meetings here these last few days, it's going to be a continuing conversation in the U.S. Hispanic marketplace for sure. Just the ever-evolving changes that are taking place and measurement and what's happening, it's definitely going to be talked about in the coming months for sure. Back in Miami, there was a two-pronged attack that Marcy mentioned with the dual challenges, one being, did Hispanic language media DR campaign contribute to the web conversion? And then how do we separate ourselves from English language to same channel, digital channel conversions? So that was basically the two-pronged attack that they were mentioning back in March. And then the thought experiment that happened through that and the study that was done with Shira from Results and partnered with Marseille, and there were three key learnings. One, the Hispanic spot equated to 3 English language landing. 2, when no Hispanic language media was in play, there were no visits. There were calls, but no visits. And 3, in a COVID-related date range, cost per view visits came way down, and Latinos visiting at a much higher rate. And that was found, and that could have been obviously COVID-related. De Niro spoke a little bit about, at the time, the Spanish effects and English conversions to digital and e-commerce. Clients will share the data on the English side, whether they will or not share that data, and to understand the impact of Hispanic language media and to do that analysis. That was basically the recap there, and then I think we just move forward here with the slides. Here are some of the questions that we spoke about in March, and we're going to attack a few of these in different ways with our panelists. One thing I did want to show is some Nielsen data and actually where and what we're seeing from an Hispanic consumer at the forefront of the digital device ownership. And clearly you could see here, whether smart connected, SVOD, smartphone or tablet, the Hispanic consumer is stronger than the non-Hispanic. And then it just goes on here and about leading shifts in consumption to digital at a faster rate among Hispanics for digital video versus TV. And then OTT services, and while bilinguals lead in most services used, where Spanish dominant Hispanics are using more paid services than the total market. and hear just about website and attribution and third-party companies that are out there, putting trackers in place where the ad gets exposed, data's processed, and then we get a measurement, just to simplify in some of the things that's happening with web attribution today. Let me just jump down here. Federico's joining us from Miami, Telemundo, and just want to kind of get back to a little bit of why we need attribution, the benefits for, and watch outs against it. Fede.
Thank you. So I have 2 teenage boys, and so I get this why question very often, right? Like all the time, why are we doing this? And I wanted to take a step back in this session before we get into like all the very detailed, how to do attribution, and like why do we need these new methodologies? Because there's a lot of challenges, and we're going to talk about that, and you can see them on the right of the page. There's obviously a lot of challenges of measuring audiences, and particularly Hispanics, but there's no turning back, right? There's no way we can ignore or avoid embracing all these new ways to measure the impact that our campaigns have, right? If we look at the traditional measurement model and methodologies, they're basically broken, right? They're not reliable anymore. They don't have the number of people in the panels, the sample that are really required to have reliable data. I'll just throw in a couple examples, right? If you look at the number of people that you need to truly represent Hispanics, particularly Spanish-dominant Hispanics, which are the ones that primarily consume Spanish media, there's like 40% missing, right? That the panel is missing like 40% of the people that, at the bare minimum, would like represent the universe of Spanish-dominant Hispanics in the U.S. When you look at also how the methodologies are changing and where you can have different numbers to measure the same thing. Like if you want to know, if you run an ad last night on La Reina del Sur in New York and you wanted to know how many impressions you got, depending on what report you pull, you can get numbers that are 2x the other number, right? And so there's just no way that you can stay there. The other reason is, if you're a CMO and you go to your CEO and tell them, we had 100,000 impressions for our campaign, the CEO is going to say, so what, right? Now that doesn't cut it anymore. We really need better ways to measure what is happening with the audiences that are exposed to our campaigns. What are the outcomes, right? So that's what the different attribution methodologies will give you. You can track everything from basic brand attributes like awareness and affinity and intention to recommend to things that are more down funnel, like visits to your website or call or transactions, right? With traditional measurement, you don't get any of that. And finally, the other advantage of attribution is that you can cut to the chase. You can, with campaigns that are becoming more and more complex across linear and digital platforms, and when it's very sometimes difficult to know how the different pieces contribute to the total, with a good attribution methodology, you can measure the final outcome of all this mix, right? So you can get to whatever you had, you're going to get to the final number of engagement. Now, just very quickly, because I don't want to take too much of the time of the panel, but some of the watch outs that we've been discussing in previous sessions, and also that we experience on a day-to-day, right? There's so many new options coming out to the marketplace all the time that sometimes may be difficult to just keep up with everything and know what is reliable and what is not. There's still a lot of modeling. There's a lot of black boxes out there. Many attribution methodologies track devices, and knowing who is behind the device could be very tricky, right? Sometimes transparency can be a challenge. And this makes it very difficult to have a agreed upon currency, right? Every campaign, you probably have to sit down with the publisher, the advertiser, the agency have to sit down and agree how we're going to measure this, what vendor we're going to use, and what is success, right? That creates obviously more work for everybody, right? Sometimes it may be difficult to isolate the impact of the different media pieces, and we need to know because that's what drives decisions on where you put the money. And obviously there's still lack of integration. But again, just to summarize, even when the new options are not perfect, right? That's the only path forward. We have to recognize that we have to move forward. We have to deal with these challenges, and we need to, basically strive to fix them, particularly with Hispanics, which again, hopefully, we're all here, interested in truly representing and capturing for the benefit of our brands and advertisers.
Thanks, Fede. Rich, I know you spoke a little bit about internally prior to us getting here with the Hispanic identity graph that Televisa Univision is doing. Maybe you could fill the group in a little bit about that.
No, that's great, and thank you. So again, being relatively new to this space, I'm about a year within Televisa Univision and learning a tremendous amount, and have to continuously learn from everybody here on the panel as well as everybody in the audience. So any feedback that you have, please provide it. But from what Televisa Univision has done in exactly what he has said just earlier, knowing that there's a tremendous amount of new currencies out there, measurement methodologies, back-end measurement solutions, et cetera, Televisa Univision saw this kind of coming, maybe about a year and change ago. So what we did was build the first U.S. Hispanic identity graph. And what that actually means is we are leveraging a lot of the data from a lot of the endpoints across Televisa Univision's digital and linear endpoints. So I think we map to about 85% of the U.S. Hispanic population. And what we have the capability to do is right-size the data that a lot of these measurement companies are actually seeing. And a lot of them are new. Nielsen has been around for a long time, but they're going to the home and they're measuring the right amount of people in that actual household. A lot of the new currency and measurement providers are not currently doing that. Whether it's ACR technology, they're measuring that as one person in the home as opposed to multiple people in the household. Over-the-air technology, which rabbit ears, et cetera, about 30 to 40% of Televisa Univision's linear consumption actually happens via over-the-air devices. And so again, similar to what he was talking about earlier, about 30 to 40% are not necessarily being captured by this level of data. So what we're doing is working with a lot of the measurement solutions, Nielsen, iSpot, VideoAmp, ComScore, Samba, et cetera. We need to work with everybody to make sure that this Hispanic identity graph level intel and information is open sourced and available not only to the currency and measurement providers, but also to agencies and clients if they actually want to utilize it for front-end planning so that you can actually then measure the back-end attribution. Because if we're not measuring the front end properly, it's going to be impossible to measure the back end properly as far as what's actually being attributable to this growing and important audience.
Great, thanks. Marce, Rich talks about the agency side and using front end, back end, and this Hispanic identity graph. Could you speak a little bit to how maybe somebody agency would take some advantages of this?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges that we have, we're an outcome-focused agency, right? So everything for us is about performance, ultimately about the bottom of the funnel. So our biggest challenge is how do we get from the impression to potentially that visit and then eventually to that sale. And the system is the measurement system is kind of broken on both sides. I mean, we're realizing now with way too much detail how much underreporting is going on in terms of Hispanic audiences. And then we're on the opposite side of the spectrum learning how much underreporting is going on the outcome side. We know from our attribution analytics across clients that we're selling anywhere from 1.3 to 4 times more than is actually being reported, meaning that we're actually getting credit for, meaning that we're actually allowed to budget for. We're getting a lot less credit than we should be for what's being purchased by the Spanish language dominant consumer that we're talking to. Conversely, the English language efforts are getting more credit than they deserve, significantly more credit. Probably 25 to 30% more credit. So for us, the challenge is how do we connect the dots? How do we think of it internally as a relay, right? So a relay race, like in the Olympic sense. The first guy around or gal around the track, that one's easy. We know we delivered X amount of audience. We know that they made X amount of phone calls, which is the most trackable linear measure that we have. But beyond that, where do we go? What's the second and the third and ultimately the fourth relay to a sale? And the only way, to quote Federico, the only way is we need to push through. We can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. There are good attribution models out there that solve that problem. They may not be perfect. They're often imperfect because clients, in our case, clients don't want to disclose their buys, their general market data, so it's very difficult to baseline. I mean, I'm sure we've all run across this. But we need to push forward one way or the other because there's for us on the agency side, it's almost existential. On the media side, there's always going to be an audience, right, that you're going to measure, but on the purchasing side, if we're getting less and less credit for what we're delivering, it becomes existential for Hispanic agencies. So for us, it's important you got to fix the top of the funnel, the impression part, but we need to figure out really how to get credit for the sales that we're making, that we're generating.
Thanks, Marcelino. And then, tying that back in again, continuing with the agency side, and Beth, and what you might be doing on the Omni Direct side for your own internal attribution. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Different things. We have the luxury of having a brand that's just Spanish language only. Sometimes when you're airing Spanish language media and English media and they're going to the same landing page, it's really hard to scrub that English data out and just solely know what's Spanish is driving. But we're in a fortunate position right now of having accessibility to Google Analytics data. And you don't always get that from the client side, right? They're very reticent about giving data, but we're in a unique advantage where we're able to actually take a look at really basic attribution of where our biggest spikes of calls and where those spots hit, and then the corresponding digital traffic along with that, because we have that line of sight to that data. If we didn't have, access to that data, then it becomes a huge challenge. And there are some clients that are really reticent about that. We're doing some other things on the CTV side. I don't know how long that's going to happen, where you can put a pixel on a website. That may be going away sooner than we'd all like it to. But for now, they can really, for some of our retail clients, they can geo-fence and really track that foot traffic and also the traffic coming directly from our Spanish media, whether it's on linear or CTV, to that website by placing that pixel there. So that's been around for a while. There's other things that we're looking at that are kind of in the infancy stages, but I think the biggest hurdle is usually from an agency's perspective, to echo what Marcelino said, is just getting the clients to give you that data. And if they're airing both English and Spanish, you need to have that line of sight into where they're spending on English and how much media investment they're giving to that language, to kind of get to your baseline and scrub that data out so that you're not double counting those visits and clicks to the website, and try and get a true picture of what Spanish is driving. But both underrepresented on the rating side, impression side, viewership side, and also, to Marcelino's point, on the purchase side, it's an ongoing challenge that we're trying to get a consensus on as an industry of how to attack. And it's difficult with a lot of different suppliers and different ways of doing things.
Great, thanks, Beth. I know go ahead, Marcy.
I'd like to add something to that. It can easily become a self-fulfilling prophecy that the Hispanic market is not working. This is going to sound a little backwards, but the more the media is able to demonstrate that you're reaching more and more Spanish language dominant Hispanics, the more expensive the media is likely to become, right? Because you're reaching more eyeballs. The more expensive the media becomes. If we don't fix the attribution side of things, we're gonna get priced out of the market, right? So you're identifying that you're reaching more people than you're being given credit for. That's going to impact, you know, the numerator in our math, and if we don't fix the denominator on the tracking side of things, it becomes self-fulfilling that we're just going to be reduced out of the market. So it's super important, and we don't blame. I'm not calling out the media. It's going to be a natural evolution, but we need to fix this problem.
Thanks. You know, obviously there's a ton of media partners that are out there today, whether general market, performance marketing, Innovid, you know, for site traffic, foot traffic, whether it's an Innovid, iSpot, Place IQ, Foursquare, et cetera. You wonder why we're not just partnering more. I mean, we're seeing it on the NBC side, where they will partner, tag, pixel, a spot, track attribution. Oh, right, I had that. Sorry. And they'll track attribution. So this is just a white label. This was a wine distributor. Here you can see what took place and the linear impact and the website engagement that happened. And this is all done via TV Squared, which is Innovid, where you see 3.5% TV web attributed list and the amount of visitors and views, to then what happened via the mobile device. And we find the majority of it through this particular attribution example, which was real, that 78% of it was via cell phone, 13% desktop, 4% tablet. 60% of it, websites, were arrived via the organic search. 40% of it were web visits direct to the site, which is, you know, another complicated issue, but at least it gave a little bit of a picture overall of what was happening in the attribution world. And then just the takeaways and feedback that they got from it, and again, it's just numbers coming back off of the schedule, but you could see that, you know, they had pretty significant viewership through the linear summary and the digital summary. 7 million impressions delivered based on what they negotiated up front to deliver this, and then successfully, you know, partner, create, and deploy this in language, cultural, relevant custom content. And then it leads to the question of why not the marketer, the agency, and the media company partner and do things like this more in the performance marketing side so we can dive deeper into the attribution model. Any of you guys want to take a little stab at that? Rich?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, and these are new tools to Televisa Univision that we didn't have a year ago, and really weren't in the marketplace. But there's clean room technology that we can work with both agencies and clients to obfuscate, you know, a lot of the information that is really sensitive that either the client doesn't want to share, the agency doesn't want to share, so that we can insert and get that information, blend it with our data, both on the linear and digital CTV, et cetera side, to figure out where are the optimal places that we can, again, co-optimize campaigns together to make better use of the inventory and have it be more effective over time. And that's a thing that, from a partnership standpoint, you know, we don't want clients and agencies to come to us and say, oh, it's not working. We want to work collaboratively to figure out the problem, build the best mousetrap alongside with you to make the media work as hard as it possibly can, because that's all we want at the end of the day, is success. But again, there's a lot that we can do. It's just these are relatively new technologies, and we just need to, you know, work together to figure out how do we actually baby step this forward and, you know, solve the problem that's at hand, so that, again, on the front end, we're trying to right-size that, and on the back end, we're getting there. But it's, you know, again, an iterative process that we need to work together on.
I know, Marcel, you like to use the quote, "You can't handle the truth," and maybe you could back that off a little bit of some of Rich's insights and stuff that you see. And
yeah, our biggest challenge in this area is getting clients to give up general market post data so that we can establish good baselines for our campaigns. So we have campaigns that run $150,000, $200,000 a week. There's no way that that's not having an impact on the English digital performance of the client in general. There's going to be spikes, but it's difficult to project what those spikes are if there's noise in the data, if we don't have the full picture. So, I learned that term clean room 2 days ago. I think it's pretty cool. To the extent that we could get clients to share data anonymously, we don't need the details, but if we can get them to share the data, we'll get they, not us as agencies, the clients, will get a lot closer to the truth. And that to me feels like it should be sort of the last barrier to entry, is if there's a way for you to give up data cleanly, safely, securely, so that we can really determine what we're delivering versus what your general market campaign is delivering, then everybody will be the wiser for it. But that's a challenge. The media can be a huge help in that respect in pushing these clean rooms and pushing that partnership. Because really, if we don't know what's going on in the general market, it's very difficult to get to any of these very specific numbers.
Clean rooms. I see Shira in the audience from Result, and I don't know how many, a little plug for the Response magazine and the great job that Thomas does, but she's in there with clean room technology and information, so a little PSA, you can go read the Response. Also, there's some great women leaders in our space that are in the Response magazine talking a lot about attribution, the difficulties in the marketplace, and the ebbs and flows and the changes that are happening every day. So I definitely encourage you guys to check that stuff out. I think really just our last point, we wanted to touch a little bit on, I think Rich, you want to maybe talk a little bit about the size of the Hispanic language market, the age demographics, what's happening today, and then our next generation consumer.
And this is very tricky because there's so many media outlets right now as far as how to track, especially the younger demographic, the 18 to 34, the 18 to 24, et cetera. They're all over the place. They're watching linear television, they're going to streaming, they're flipping to social, they're utilizing media technology way differently than I used to. But the capability there, and knowing that there's such a huge opportunity, knowing that basically a quarter of the U.S. population between 18 to 24 is Hispanic, whereas the U.S. Hispanic population I think is at 19 or 20%. So it's a spiking, growing audience, and we need to lean into it to figure out how to make this into an opportunity, not a challenge. And so there's a lot of different ways that we can, again, partner together to figure out how to harness this younger demographic and find out how to track them, how to follow them, and how to make sure that we're being able to track exposure to purchase, site visit, search lift capability, et cetera. It's tricky, but it's something that, again, everybody here and probably everybody here wants to figure out. But it's something that, again, we just have to work on, knowing that this is such a young demographic versus our English language counterparts. 10 or 12 years younger on average from that standpoint. So it's a good challenge to have to lean into, but again, a huge opportunity.
Mike, if I can ask,
yeah, sure.
If I can add just to what Rich said, right, and again, going back to the importance of this demographic, right, this Hispanic audience. So if we think about the growth in the U.S. over the next 10, 20 years, right? Because Rich mentioned, 25% of the population in, under, what was the age? 18 to 24, right, is Hispanic. But you think about the growth of the population, right? 60% of the growth is going to come from Hispanics in the next 20 years, right? So again, if you're an advertiser, if you're a publisher, if you're a media agency, and you're trying to help connect with this audience to sell a product, sell a solution, make them to watch a movie or a show, right? Over half of the potential is going to come from Hispanics, right? So understanding the Hispanic behavior is critical. Experimenting with these attribution methodologies, while imperfect, it's critical so you can get it right? Because imagine if you miss half of the opportunity in the next 20 years, right? And something that it's been said in this same forum is that with Hispanics, language is critical, culture is critical, right? So understanding when you have a communication, if you do it in not just in the right language, but with the right context, right? It's also very, very important. And so when you have an ad on Spanish language media, that is basically a translation of a Spanish language one, right? That is also going to cause the attribution to misrepresent the true potential of that segment, right? So again, it's like all these little pieces have to come together, and we're going to have to learn together, right? Because we're experimenting, but we don't have we can't afford not getting it right, because otherwise we're going to miss a big chunk of the opportunity for our brands.
No doubt. Marce, you want to add anything to that, or Beth, or?
No, I think you hit it on the spot.
Okay.
I mean, context is everything. It's the language, it's the culture, but it's the sort of the marketing context that we're discussing now that will determine whether a campaign is defined by a client as successful or not. We could have done everything right, culturally, communication-wise, content-wise, but if it's not getting measured accurately, then it's all for naught. So I think it's a trinity. It's culture, language, and context.
Sorry, again, to jump in, but just I'm going to throw in kind of like a challenge or an invitation to all the partners that are here today, right, and sponsoring or participating, but all the people that are coming up with new ways to measure attribution. Don't think about Hispanics as an afterthought, right? Like if you can get it right, you're going to have a lot of business, right? If you can develop methodologies that take into consideration ethnicity, gender, age from the beginning, and you can find a way to, again, connect the devices with people, you're going to get a lot of money, right? You're going to be rich, right? So don't let it slip.
Yep.
Definitely don't want to let that slip.
Yes.
Right, yeah, exactly. I mean, with those type of numbers, since the census that Fede has shared, and just that kind of knowledge and understanding of the Hispanic marketplace that he has, and then all of our media, different backgrounds, we're all in this together. And as I said in the beginning, it's why attribution is going to continue to be a big evolving thing, because there is a big marketplace out there for us to all take advantage of and be successful off and make a lot of money, Fede. Right.
And I think another thing to keep into consideration is that when you're measuring the audience, the viewers, and also your attribution, is that it's a multi-generational, often co-viewing household you're looking at. So that also can be challenges or opportunities. I prefer to look at it as opportunities that you need to consider as well. You're not just reaching, one viewer. You're likely reaching a whole household across many demographic groups. So that's something else you need to keep in mind when you're looking at any kind of set-top box data and things like that, and factoring that into your attribution model.
Great. Thomas, I think that was about it for us, and questions, and yeah.
Questions from the audience. Got a open forum opportunity, so anyone? You guys nailed it in 35 minutes. Wow. Everyone knows what they need to know now, right? Oh, all right. Going once. Going twice. So, yeah. Oh.
I knew Matt would come
You let
up
me
with
walk all the
something.
way away.
I don't know if it's a question, but so my household, my wife's Argentinian from Buenos Aires. I'm a white Jewish male from New York City. As mixed as it could possibly be, right? And so I'm pretty sure that the marketers think I am a 35-year-old woman, right? And I get targeted very oddly in many ways, shapes, and forms. How do you combat that? How do you ensure that, you could reach someone like me in my household who watches a totally different device, different streaming environments than my wife does, and you can imagine she's watching telenovelas and other kind of content from Buenos Aires that she's streaming, and it's like, how do you sparse that out? And also my daughter who's co-viewing it with us as well, and kids showing. So it's, for me, I'm just curious, how do you find that out, right? How do you understand that more?
Oh boy, that's so so many things to
Yeah.
address
So
that, right?
you have to
It's a
stop
lot
watching.
It's a lot to unpack there.
You have to stop watching the telenovelas.
Yes.
You can start there.
Well, then you are getting targeted right.
But I'm thinking, how can I watch it? My wife watches, but I still get targeted as like a female product sometimes on my stream. If I see this thing, I'm sitting there like, we don't share the same phone, right? We don't log into the same, we can log into the same. So how do you?
I don't know if anybody.
I think what is going to happen is, a household IP address is going to diversify into device ID IP addresses. So it's going to be a little bit cleaner over time. But again, it's a time process. It's not anything that we can flip the switch and figure out, because everybody gets multiple ads depending on kind of who you're with or who you're near with or what your phone is listening to. So over time, it's going to get cleaner and better. But right now, it's.
What happens when IP becomes PII?
And again, that's where privacy compliant things like Snowflake, et cetera, clean room technology, et cetera, it again will shield that PII so that again, don't do that. No one will actually be able to see that, so it can be shared in a privacy compliant manner.
We talk about blockchain technology.
It's the same, yeah, similar type of technology, yeah.
I want to say something that may not necessarily is what you're looking for, right? But it's one of the realities that we face as again, advertisers, publishers. One of the myths of digital media is precise targeting, right? And I think we get the illusion that there's so much data about people that everybody, that you're being watched, right, and tracked, that we think that we can get the right impression to the right person all the time. And that's unfortunately not true for, again, all the reasons that we've said. And actually, the same goes to traditional measurement, right? When, Nielsen, in some cases, uses the head of household to, categorize the entire household, right? So your household is a Jewish New York, household, right? Nothing wrong with that. So what do you do in the meantime? Well, we get the new technologies. I think that's why it's so important to sometimes stay broad, right? And you have to target, adults 18 to 34 or adults 18 to 49, because that at least you ensure that some of your impressions are going to get to the right people instead of all getting to the wrong people. Like, I'm with you that my kids sometimes share the same devices that I share, right? That TV that we share. And so sometimes I know more about what my kids are doing thanks to the ads that I'm getting on TV that by watching them directly, right? Because that is not going to change. So again, this is probably not the answer you were expecting, but this is where you have to make sure that you're not abusing targeting, right? And just stay a little bit broad.
You can slice and dice it much more, right? So
That's right. That's right.
I gotta say, with a small child at home, I have small children at home, and I'm just targeted as if I'm 4-year-old. So kudos to your wife for watching a lot of TV, for beating out the kids. Anyone else? Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you to this tremendous group. We appreciate you being here. We now have a break until 4 o'clock when we'll have our Brand Response Council up here talking about challenges with different and new markets like CBD and others. And it'll be an interesting conversation. So we'll see you at 4. Thanks.